My name is Clara Whitman, and I am 26 years old. I live in the small town of Maplewood, Oregon. This place has its charm, with its dense trees and quiet streets, but for me, it is also a reminder of a dark past that haunts me every day. People often say the past is behind us, but for me, it lingers like a shadow. At first glance, I seem like an ordinary woman. I have brown hair that falls in soft waves and green eyes that tell stories of both sadness and resilience. But inside, I carry scars that run much deeper than skin, scars from a relationship that nearly destroyed me. When I was 19, I fell into the trap of a man named Michael. He was much older than me, charming at first, with an ability to make me feel special and loved. Little did I know, that charm was nothing but a cleverly disguised mask for manipulation and cruelty. For 7 long years, he became my world and simultaneously twisted it into a nightmare. He was emotionally and sexually abusive, often isolating me from my friends and family, feeding me lies until I could no longer distinguish between truth and deceit. He drugged me. I lost count of how many Xanax pills I took each day, sometimes up to 10. I was barely 100 pounds, lost in a haze and utterly disconnected from reality. I was like a ghost, drifting through my own life, unable to function, trapped in his web of control. In late 2016, I finally found the strength to break away from him. But I didn't find freedom, I found despair. I was homeless, not because I was reckless, but because Michael had systematically destroyed every part of me. I had no support system, no money to my name, and I was terrified. I spent nights in shelters, relying on the kindness of strangers, feeling like less than a person. I struggled to rebuild myself, all while fighting an uphill battle with my past. By 2019, I finally rented a tiny room in a shared house. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I began to find a semblance of normalcy in my life. I started to work again, taking small steps that felt like victories. But just when I thought I could finally breathe, I received a letter that would catapult me back into that terrifying world of fear and confusion. It arrived one summer afternoon, marked in all caps, with ominous red ink that seemed to scream at me. The letter was from the government, and it said I owed a massive amount of money. My heart sank to my stomach as I read it again and again, trying to comprehend the weight of the words. My mind raced. How could this happen? I had just begun to recover from the emotional and physical trauma inflicted on me by Michael. My instincts kicked in, and I went into survival mode. I began to pay the debt, desperately trying to make sense of it all, still feeling like I was somehow responsible for the chaos that swirled around me. Each payment felt like a heavy stone I was carrying on my back, dragging me deeper into despair. 2 years passed, and I was still stuck in this cycle of anxiety and confusion, burdened by a debt that felt like an anchor pulling me down. That is when the truth finally dawned on me. I discovered that Michael had stolen my social security number during those 7 years he spent controlling and abusing me. He had opened a PayPal account under my name and even started a business using my identity. I had never even received a physical social security card. Somehow, he memorized the number when I was too out of it to notice. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. My sense of betrayal was overwhelming. I filed a police report, believing justice would prevail, that someone would listen to my story. But nothing happened. The report vanished into the bureaucracy of the system, never to see the light of day in the fraud department. That is when I learned the devastating news. The statute of limitations had passed, and there would be no consequences for him. The man who had already been to prison for similar offenses was walking free, while I remained shackled by the pain and trauma he had inflicted on me. I was stuck with the debt, the emotional scars, and a lingering emptiness where my sense of self used to be. Oftentimes, I would find myself staring out my window, watching the world go by while I felt trapped in my own life. It felt unfair. I could not accept that I was the one left behind while he roamed freely, likely enjoying his life, free from any repercussions. I felt like I needed to do something. I craved justice or, at the very least, a way to make him pay for what he did to me. I started brainstorming ideas, thinking, planning, scheming. I wanted to confront him directly, but I feared what that might lead to. I also thought about going public, sharing my story to expose him, but I worried about the backlash. I explored different legal avenues, but each suggestion led me back to the same dead-end wall. It was then that I realized I needed to change my approach. If I could not seek justice through conventional means, I would find another way, an indirect route to make him pay emotionally and socially for the havoc he wreaked on my life. After days and nights of dwelling on my options, I concocted a plan that felt both thrilling and terrifying. I searched online for information about him, delving deep into his past, uncovering fragments of his life that traced a pattern of deceit and manipulation. I unearthed social media profiles, online businesses he had created, and names he used. I meticulously gathered every piece of information until I could recreate a timeline of his deceitfulness. I discovered that he had a string of disgruntled former partners, all having been strung along by the same charming facade I once fell for. I reached out to them through anonymous messages, sharing my story and building a network. Each woman resonated with my pain, recalling their own experiences and their own battles. Together, we formed a support group, and slowly but surely, an idea began to take shape. The more we talked, the more we realized that we could do this together. We decided to tell our stories, not only to each other but to the world. It would be a form of collective revenge, a way to expose him to the light of truth. Once I had things arranged with the group, I worked tirelessly to create a detailed blog post about our combined experiences. I blurred out our faces and used aliases for our names to protect our identities. I wanted the world to know the truth about Michael while shielding myself from any potential backlash. When I finally published the blog, it felt like a release. It was as if I had exhaled all the pain inside me. The post was raw and honest, detailing the emotional and physical trauma he had inflicted on us while weaving our stories together. In my heart, I hoped it would catch the attention of others and perhaps even the authorities. The response was overwhelming. Women began reaching out to us, sharing their own stories of abuse and manipulation by men like Michael. Our blog grew in visibility and soon caught the attention of a sympathetic journalist who reached out for an interview. The chance to share our story through a trusted platform was both exhilarating and terrifying. My anxiety bubbled to the surface as I prepared, afraid of what might come from sharing my story so publicly. But I knew I had to do it, not just for myself, but for all the women who had suffered in silence. As the interview aired, I felt a rush of validation and strength. The weight of my past still lingered, but now I felt empowered to reclaim what was taken from me. My story resonated with viewers, leading to discussions about domestic abuse, manipulation, and the importance of shining a light on these hidden struggles. Slowly, people began to identify Michael, calling him out on social media, sharing our blog post, and demanding justice for all the women he had hurt. The tide began to turn against him, and it felt surreal. He could no longer hide behind the veil of charm when the truth was laid bare before everyone. I witnessed his once comfortable life unraveling like a fragile thread, as the very foundation he built on manipulation began to crack. I felt a rush of exhilaration and satisfaction watching it all unfold. However, in the midst of my triumph, I also experienced moments of fear. I worried about the consequences of exposing him, uncertain about how he might retaliate. Finally, the moment of reckoning arrived when I received a message from him, threatening legal action if I did not take down the blog. My heart raced, but beneath the fear, I felt a flicker of hope. Instead of cowering in fear, I gathered with my network of survivors, and we crafted a response together. We stood united, ready to face whatever came next. I realized then that I finally reclaimed my identity. I was no longer a victim, but a survivor. As I sent the response, I felt a culmination of strength welling within me, the once feeble woman locked in Michael's darkness now, standing tall, ready to fight for my truth. The last few months had transformed me. I was no longer broken but resilient. Even though the toll of the past still weighed heavily, I realized I sowed seeds of justice that began to bloom in ways I never anticipated. Eventually, Michael's once untouchable reputation began to falter. People he had once persuaded began to see behind the facade, and he lost credibility, opportunities, and friendships. I felt a strange sense of closure, watching him face consequences for his actions. I continued to work on my healing, enjoying the support from my network, not just in our shared experiences, but creating new bonds of friendship. It became a source of strength and camaraderie as we shared our stories of resilience and how to reclaim our lives. Just when I thought everything was settling, I received another message that threatened to shatter the new normal I had built. It was a woman reaching out, a new victim of Michael's manipulation, sharing her own harrowing story. I felt a pit form in my stomach, recognizing that despite my victory, the fight was far from over. I did what I had to do. I listened to her carefully, and I promised her that she was not alone, that her story mattered, and together, we would fight to reclaim our power. My life became more than just rising from the ashes. It transformed into a mission to help others break free from the shackles of abuse. I began advocating for awareness of domestic abuse, starting workshops and outreach programs to help victims find their voice. Each day, I honored those who had come before me and those who will come after. I changed my life into a catalyst for healing, claiming my strength, embracing the power of our collective stories, and shedding light on the shadows that once held me captive. It became my new normal, and while remnants of pain still lingered, I vowed to keep that darkness at bay. In the end, I learned that true revenge is not about causing harm, but about reclaiming our lives. I discovered that with every story shared, we create ripples of change. The road ahead may have twists and turns, but I embraced each moment with renewed strength, ready to forge a brighter future, both for myself and others walking their own path toward freedom.